Question I ask you this morning, I ask with a tad of trepidation because I am fearful that you may give an answer and it will give you away. How do you hide things? How do you hide things? How do you hide Christmas gifts from someone you love? You what? In the car? In the car? In plain sight. How many of you have thought, oh, I've got the perfect spot? And you go and you put whatever it is that gift is, you put it in there, and there's another gift already in there that you forgot about last year, or the year before, or the year before. Sometimes it can be difficult to hide things. Sometimes it's easy. It's easy to hide things from the little children, but as they start to get a little older, it gets a little more difficult, doesn't it? How many of you, when you were children, hunted and searched for your Christmas gifts? Come on, be honest. Be honest. Leave your hand up there high. I want to see. How many of you opened them before Christmas? Yeah, me too. My parents thought they did a really good job of hiding our Christmas gifts until the age that we became that it was no longer necessary to hide our Christmas gifts because they recognized that if they're in plain sight, we're not going to try and open them beforehand. So sometimes it can be difficult, or we might run into challenges trying to hide Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, little things like that. But how do you hide other things? How do you hide your pain? How do you hide your anger or your disappointment? Those things are a little tougher to hide, aren't they? You're not going to hide them where someone's going to find them because those are the things that we hide within ourselves. Those are the things we hide within ourselves. They can cause great anguish. They can, as those of you in the health profession will attest, they can cause illness. They can cause one to become physically ill when we try to hide these things because it causes such pressure on ourselves. And it's a circular thing that as we hide the pain increases. As we try to suppress or hide the anger that is within us, we just get more angry. Or when we find ourselves disappointed, we become more disappointed, maybe not in others or in whatever the act it was, but we become more disappointed in ourselves, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing until one day it can overtake us if we don't find a way to deal with it. So let me ask you another question. How do you hide from things? Now this one brings to mind hiding from my grandchildren when we play hide and seek. But I found out a very, very important lesson as a new grandfather many years ago. Your hiding spot has to be age appropriate. Not to me, to them. Because if you hide too well with a 2 or a 3-year-old and they don't find you, they just give up and go play with something else. And you're left in the kitchen cupboard to sleep all day. But how do you hide yourself from pain? Denying that it's there. Thank you, Roy. That's right. We deny that it's there. And men are far more guilty than women. Physical pain. And even spiritual pain. We deny that it's there. This isn't happening. Or anger. How do you hide from anger? Or how do you hide from disappointment? You see, these are all things that are a part of life. I don't know that there's anyone in here that can't say they have not felt pain or anger or disappointment, or all three at one time in their lives. But even in hiding things or hiding from things, they still exist. No matter how much you deny the pain that is within you, whether it's physical or spiritual, it still exists. Or the anger that keeps welling and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Even though we try to hide from it, it is still there. And I have discovered over the years that that anger that we may have with another individual, chances are they don't even know you're angry. Someone once told me, they said, the only thing that anger hurts is the person who's angry. But we still find ourselves hiding from it. And even though we hide, and even though we have disappointment, great disappointment in things, and even though we hide from that disappointment, it still exists. So how do we deal with these things? What is it we do with the things of life that affect us, that can physically affect us, spiritually affect us, mentally affect us? Some would say that these things are a result of our hearts being hardened. We're familiar with that phrase from the Old Testament, when God hardened the heart, and the first one that comes to mind is Pharaoh. But we read throughout the Hebrew Scriptures of the hardening of hearts. People who were angry, who were disappointed. Sometimes they were God's people, sometimes they were others who were not God's people, that God hardened their hearts intentionally, that a lesson would be taught or a lesson would be learned. But oftentimes, the hardening of the heart was done in order to affect the Hebrew Jewish people. Not always was it their hearts being hardened. Very seldom. Matter of fact, I struggled to even find a place in the Scriptures that God hardened the heart of a believer, of a Jewish or a Hebrew person. It was always those outside whose hearts were hardened in order that a lesson would be taught, a lesson would be learned. In the Gospels, we turn to the Gospels. We live our lives post-gospel, post-Jesus. We live our lives as a result of the gift that God has given. But in the early church, when the church was just getting started, when things were just starting to build, and Jesus went to, first and foremost, the Jews. And when you read the lessons that he has taught, the things that he has said, you see that he was sent to God's people first. Not only, but first. But in the beginning of the early church, it seems like the Word of God of the New Testament, the Gospels, was veiled to many of the Jewish people. Not by God, but by the things that they did, by their own distrust. Their own distrust. Or they were blinded by the leaders. And their faith was placed in the wrong place. The Gospels were veiled to many Gentiles. Not because it wasn't for them, but because they felt unworthy. Or they had grown and just accepted the fact that we are not God's children, so this isn't for us. They had been taught that their entire lives. And so there were those who did not accept or could not see the teachings of Jesus Christ as their personal way to salvation. 2 weeks ago, the title of the sermon, does anybody remember the title of the sermon 2 weeks ago? I don't expect you to. I had to look it up. Well, I thought I knew what it was, but I had to look to make sure. The title of the sermon 2 weeks ago was Not My God, with little g. The little g. We talked about in the things in our lives that overtake our trust and our commitment. The things that move us away from God. The things that we place, the things that we replace God with the things that give us immediate happiness and or recognition. When we start living our lives worshiping other things, other beings, other gods, the gospel becomes veiled to us. Our hearts move away from righteousness and into the realm of self-righteousness. We give our lives to serving our own personal goals rather than serving what it is God has called us to. And part of that message was these are not our God. Again, in today's scripture, Paul is addressing turning away from Jesus. The veil that he speaks of is not from God. It's not the veil of the Old Testament. It's not the hardening of hearts that we remember from the Old Testament. But rather, the veil is created, the hardening is created in the gods that we create. The things we allow to draw us away. Oftentimes in seeking the easy way, the comfortable way. How many of you like to put yourselves in situations that are uncomfortable? I don't think any of us are going to run headlong into it. You might go because you know it's important, or maybe it's required of whatever it is you do with your life. But we're not going to actively go out and seek uncomfortable situations to become a part of. In seeking the easy way, oftentimes we are looking for that instant gratification. And that's what our society has become. Alexa, who starred in the first Mad Max movie? The first Mad Max movie, the first Mad Max movie, how did she say it? Now I can't remember how she said it. Should have wrote it down, I guess. But we have that instant. We want to know right now. And I got this little thing sits on my stand right beside the TV, or right beside the couch. And I can ask her questions. And she'll give me an answer. Well, most of the time. Sometimes she'll say, I don't know that. You just have to rephrase the question. We want to know right now. We want things to happen right now. Because it's the easy way. And sometimes it's the easy way that veils our heart from the way of God. So this leads us to another question. Lots of questions today. What do we do? What do we do? We know we fall to temptation. We all fall to temptation in some manner, in some way. We also all know that there is one who would destroy us. Satan. Satan's real. Satan's real. Maybe it's not the little red guy with the horns and the pitchfork. But Satan's real. And he would destroy us. He would destroy our relationship with God. There is no easy answer to this question, what do we do? There is no easy answer because for each one of us it is different. How do we suppress the gods of this world and open ourselves up to the God of creation? Well, there are a few things that may help. The first thing we need to do is we need to develop an awareness. Satan is real. Our world has taken that away from us. We say, oh, it's just a figure, it's just an imaginary thing. No, it is not. And when we come to grips and understand and fully profess and confess that Satan is real, we have developed an awareness that there is a force beyond ourselves that is pulling us away from your relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what Satan would do. That is his one single purpose. Develop an awareness that there are gods of this world. There are gods of this world that we have created that draw us away from God, that draw us away from the Creator God. You can't do battle if you don't know who or what the enemy is. You cannot do battle if you do not know who or what the enemy is. Read an article in the New York Times this past week. Yes, I read the New York Times now. Who would ever believe that? Read an article in the New York Times, and they were talking about the war on terror. It's still going on. It's still going on. It's just taking a back seat to other things that the media thinks is more important. And one of the things that one of the leaders of the forces said, the hardest part about the war is you can't tell who you're fighting. You don't know who the enemy is. They don't wear a different uniform than we do. They don't wear uniforms. And it's hard to distinguish who the enemy is. Satan has done that in our world, folks. He has done that right here with us. He's found a way to disguise himself that we don't recognize. You can't do battle if you don't know who it is or who or what the enemy is. So we have to develop that awareness, a keen awareness that can only come through our worship and our praise of God, that can only come from our faithfulness, through our trust, through our commitment to serving the one who has created us. And after you have become aware of who the enemy is, or maybe what the enemy is, develop a battle plan. Develop a battle plan. My battle plan goes, if this, then that. If this happens, then that is what I'm going to do. That's a battle plan. That's a reactionary battle plan. And sometimes that's the best way to start. Start on the defense before we move to the offense, because we've gotten ourselves so deep into the... I don't want to use a football analogy because it's overused. We've got ourselves so deep in the hole that we need to quit digging. Develop a battle plan. If this happens, then that is what I'm going to do. 38 years ago. 38 years ago. My gracious. I turned over the finances of our family to one who was far more qualified than I. Because I allowed the temptations of the world to consume me. And I learned through her teachings, through her faith, through her trust in God, that if I spent the money on me, I couldn't spend it on others. I couldn't spend it to help others. So we developed a plan. We developed a plan that I have shared with other people when they have come to me and they have said, Pastor, we don't give enough on Sunday. Don't come to me and tell me that. I don't want to hear it. No, I do. I will help you. And this is how I will help you. I will give you a plan, if you will, or some direction. I will not judge you, because there was a long time in my life that plate went by and I just kind of passed it quickly for a lot of years. Some would come and say, we don't give enough. So here's my challenge to you. Do you eat out? Y'all eat out. I know you go to restaurants because you are the folks I've been asking where to go. And you're always good with the answers. You haven't let me down yet. Well, maybe there was one. No, I'm kidding. If you go out to eat, whatever that check is, whatever that bill comes to, match it on Sunday morning in the plate. That's simple, right? That's a simple way to do that. Although you're going to start going to McDonald's instead of going to JC's Wine Cellar, maybe. But there's a way, there's a plan. Recognize that in life that draws us away from our service to God, and find a way to correct it. And that's a simple way to correct it. If I'm going to spend my money on this, then I'm going to match it and I'm going to give it to the church. If I'm going to go to Cedar Point, then I'm going to match whatever it is I spent in giving to the church. See, some people live their lives feeling guilty for enjoying life. And I've talked with a lot of people who felt that way. And I myself, we as a family have struggled sometimes with the vacations we take, with the vehicles that we drive. God has blessed us with very good vehicles. He's blessed us with some amazing vacations, some amazing ministry trips, mission trips. Our policy has become in our family, and this is only personal for us. You make your own plan, but I can share an example that what we spend on a vacation, we will spend in the mission field somehow. Whether it's directly going or whether it's just supporting someone else who is going. I will share with you today that coming up here in the near future, Georgette and I will be I will be sharing with you here, and she'll be sharing in Richmond, that we are now investigating and looking into the possibility of taking a mission team and going to Puerto Rico in the fall. Think about it. Think about it. It'll be a reconstruction group. If you can swing a hammer, if you can run a saw, welcome to come along. But we're also planning a trip to Alaska on a cruise. That is our way. I'm not saying it's going to work for you. I'm not going to say it works for you. I was just sharing this morning. This fit in really good this morning. Talking about reading books beyond what I'm reading for the sermons. I don't do it. I don't do it like I want to. So as I was sharing with someone who gave me a book this morning, you know what I'm going to take and I'm going to add to my time of devotions in the morning. I'm going to finish my devotions and I'm going to put them off to the side and I'm going to open up a book. It's church related, but not a devotional. I'm going to read a chapter in a book every day now. I'm still serving God. I'm still worshiping and praising God, but I'm also allowing God to give me that time for myself. Oftentimes in our lives, we don't allow ourselves to relax. Or we relax a little too much. We have to find the balance. And therein is the challenge. That's why the answer is not easy. What do we do? The answer is not simple because it's going to be different for each and every one of us here today. Be aware. Be aware. There is one who would destroy you, who would destroy your relationship with Jesus Christ. And in that awareness, make a plan. Make a plan of how to deal with, how to stand up against. Because part of that plan, in part of that plan, you need to know whose you are. And whose are you? You are the Lord's. You are the Lord's. And sometimes in those moments of temptation, in those moments of anger, in those moments of disappointment, in those moments, whatever it may be in your life, these 4 words should be on your lips, on your mind. I am the Lord's. And the one who would destroy you cannot destroy that. I am the Lord's. Say that with me this morning, would you please? I am the Lord's. Now say it like you mean it. I am the Lord's.